welcome to the MVP Show. My intention is that you listen to the stories of these MVP guests and are inspired to become an MVP and bring value to the world through your skills. If you have not checked it out already, I do a YouTube series called How to Become an MVP. The link is in the show notes. With that, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from London, England. She works at Avanade as a senior consultant, Dynamics 365 and customer engagement. She was first awarded her MVP in 2023. And she speaks at Microsoft community events. She is an advocate as a human evangelist about user-centered design. Now, that is such a topic dear to my heart. She's also into enabling governance. She's got skills that build across diverse teams, particularly fusion teams, and empowering users. You can find links to her bio, show notes is where you'll find those. Social media, etc., will all be there. And with that, welcome to the show, Angeliki.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the show and to see you again, because it's only been, Slovenia since I last saw you in person. So good to see you again and catch up on your story, because I think you've got an interesting story and it'll be good to tell people that story. So let's start with food, family, and fun. What do they mean to you?
Well, it's a very deep question for me. I'm Mediterranean. I'm actually half Greek, half Italian. So as you can imagine, all of these things mean quite a lot. Mediterranean countries are those kind of beautiful sunshine places where food for us is a massive bonding factor, is a factor where we socialize and come together. So you can definitely call me a foodie, and with high expectations as well. So equally, family means a lot as well. I actually have my parents visiting me as we speak, and our puppy, who is my designated colleague for the month, which is amazing. And it's interesting, I think, the concept of family, because it's, blood ties are important, but what I've found through the community is the concept of tribe. And it feels like an adopted family. So it means for me even more, because it binds us through the passion and the energy that we bring and the connections that we make.
It's so true. Tell me, and I mean, heck, I've been able to travel the world with the MVP program and find every city I've gone to. I remember Jonas Rapp when I went to Sweden. Took me out to lunch, never met the guy before. Outside of that, it was just, amazing, and just the family spirit is very strong in the community. Tell us about your name.
Sure. So my full name is Angeliki Patsiavou, a very long traditional Greek name, actually. And I was born and raised in Greece, but thankfully, my mom, who is the Italian in the equation, raised me bilingual and always kept my Italian family ties quite close. I actually went to Italy for most summers of my life as well. So I very much feel an equal half and half. And funny enough, even though I have a Greek name and I speak all these different languages, I don't think I look necessarily like either or, because I have very fair skin as a result, and I don't actually tan somehow. I probably don't look like most Mediterraneans, but definitely have it in my blood.
That's awesome. You said you holidayed a lot in Italy. Where's your favorite?
Sicily. So by the coast, which has been such a blessing. The south of Italy, in my opinion, is one of the best places to be. The people, the food, the climate, and also the variety you will find in terms of destinations. I can't recommend it enough to people.
I've not been lower than Rome, so I've done a lot of northern Italy. Spent quite a bit. It's my wife and my favorite country of all that we've been to. We've been to about 40, getting close to 50 countries, but Italy is our number one choice by a long shot. And we intended to go and stay for a month in Corfu, down the south of and then when we had our second baby, and then we realized traveling across the world with somebody under the age of 3 months old was not going to work. So we did not do that. But yeah, we'll be back in Italy hopefully next year for a month, which will be nice.
Oh, I can only imagine. And if you ever need tips,
yes,
you know where to find me.
I know where to find you. So tell me a bit about, first of all, tell me a bit about your origin story and how you got into tech.
Gosh, it's such a whirlwind. Unlike many people, I don't have a traditional technical background or a computer science degree of any sort or programming, like none of these things. I was always a math geek very early on in school. I knew I loved math, but I also knew that I wasn't going to do a math degree because I didn't necessarily want to get into teaching or research of any sorts. So the next best for me was economics. So academically speaking, I'm actually an economist. And I did 5 years of that. I did a 4-year bachelor in Greece, then came to London, which is how I ended up in London to begin with, to do my master's, very hardcore one as well. And this was my introduction to tech. I had to teach myself R for my thesis. So, nothing too crazy, just very advanced programming in a month. And I fell in love with it so much, and it became a bit of a flag for me that I enjoy that more than the rest. And it won me over to the point where I felt, okay, I'm young enough. It's potentially a good idea to take a bit of a leap of faith and an exciting risk to go into tech as my first job. And out of all places, I went into online gambling. And I was recruited out of uni in a CRM role. I didn't know what CRM was at the time. I just knew it was going to be a tech role. I was excited. I was really into behavioral economics, and I thought it must be quite fascinating to work in a marketing department in a company, in a place where you're pretty much understanding human behavior under completely random circumstances and risk. And I thought, okay, that's going to be fun. And somehow CRM finds me. It was in-house CRM, nothing in terms of major operators, but ultimately I enjoyed it so much. I realized that was it somehow. And very early on, CRM became my love language, which I know sounds cheesy, but it somehow happened.
I get it. Because I found that over 20 years ago, when I first touched what was called MSCRM back then, and I was just like, I didn't know it was going to take over my career, but I did literally fall in love with it, and the ease of use and what you could do and what you create was amazing. So online gambling, and I nod my head because I've been to Malta and I've seen the setups there. I've been to Gibraltar, and of course that's a big location for online gambling.
Those are both the meccas. All the operators are mainly licensed there, and funny enough, I got to travel a lot in those destinations because of that. So it was some exciting early 20s.
Yeah, and is it really because you see the external, you can watch online gambling so extensively. It's a spectator sport, and particularly, I suppose, COVID really expanded it massively. But when you were involved, was it really kind of flashy, exciting? What was it like working?
It had its excitement. Let me tell you this. I do want to dispel certain myths because people's reaction is quite interesting when I tell them my origins. They expect I was some kind of professional poker player for some reason. Not sure why. But there's certain myths around, it's all rigged, it's all about the house winning, or whatever kind of negative connotations. Or maybe it's not as exciting and it's all about, just very depressive situations. But in fact, it was very flashy in the sense that it was extremely technologically advanced. The things that I was exposed to very early on in my career, we're talking about 11 years ago, were so ahead of its time. I absolutely loved it. I learned a lot of my skills back then, things that I sometimes have not even seen now. They were very advanced. I think I was also blessed that I worked particularly for one company who ended up being now one of the biggest giants globally, and they had invested a lot in their stack. And it was actually quite impressive to be a techie at that time. It was all about really exciting integrations, real time was very important because it is the kind of industry, especially on the sports side, because I was also partly on the sports side, where you have to be very reactive in real time. You have to be competitive. It's very similar to actually being on the stock market because you are trading prices. And it was very exciting being a marketeer who had to think and operate so much in real time and had all the tools she needed as well. I think that was probably one of the few roles I've ever had in my life where I never felt like I had the wrong tools or the wrong implementation. So I was a little bit spoiled as well.
You're right about the advancements. Years ago in my career, I was in Hong Kong and with the Hong Kong Jockey Club, which of course is the biggest funder of all public events, schools, everything, because they were set up as the only official gambling mechanism under the British government when they were, had colonized that region. And so a phenomenal amount of money you would transact every race day. And so we're involved with them. And then that also had us in, because the regionally, to go across to Macau in China. And it was all work in the casinos. And the data points that they had on people was off the Richter scale. They could tell a individual coming in from China with his family, they would know the minute he got on the train, even though that train trip might be like 400 miles away, when he got off, they knew kind of what his gambling profile was. They had somebody come and, if you like, chaperone his wife and kids and take them as far away from as possible because that would affect his ability to gamble. And then because of the tax laws, they couldn't take their money back into the mainland China, so to speak. And so they had then all the luxury brands in the world in the casino, which they could go and spend everything that they kind of earned. And so the whole flush of money was they had the ability to understand the individual's wallet and how much they had depleted it and how much was left and how to give them that dopamine spike on, if they sensed he was going to stop, gambling, and also how to make him just have the most amazing weekend of his life. And how they set that all up was all intensive data that was then, positioned out to the right people at the right time over the casino. It's just phenomenal, mind-blowing. And this was, as you say, this is 10, 15 years ago. The tech was amazing.
Even early on, I can't even imagine what's happening these days. It's actually a very interesting market here in the UK. I remember when I was starting out, someone told me there's over 300 online operators. It's mad, the competition that you're facing, the diversification that you have to expose yourself to, and also the regulation. So in fact, because I started there and I was so heavily regulated, funny enough, after doing a few rounds and a few roles, I moved into finance. And I remember even in my interviews, because they were like, okay, but how do you think you're going to operate in an extremely regulated and pressure environment? I said, well, I'm already doing it. Whatever you have, I have equal amounts of regulation and pressure where I am, probably sometimes more. So it's fascinating to see it from the inside. In terms of how things actually work, especially on their version of the trading floor.
Yeah, it was interesting in what I saw. I think the UK tax office made a mistake in driving so much of the gambling outside of the UK to start with, which meant they set up in places like Gibraltar and Malta and things like this. And so then they realized that, hang on a second, we're missing out on all that tax. That was a silly thing to do. We should have embraced them back in the UK. And I mean, at the end of the day, the UK are the masters in the world of, I don't know if I'm allowed to say money laundering or washing money through particularly the city of London and at a global scale. So they've always done well in in the handling or the receiving of money from their operations right through from colonial times.
Quite a history lesson there, isn't it?
Yeah. And I just want to put that out there because I'll see if I get any people feedback on that comment. Tell me about STEM. What are you doing to, STEM, IT careers, that type of thing? What are you seeing about the next generations coming through in this space?
I think there's an insane amount of opportunity, but I also think that we have a responsibility as the community, as people in tech, as people who have been fortunate enough to have certain blessings and opportunities. I think there's a lot we can and should be doing. So I grew up in a very traditional Mediterranean country, and growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, I didn't have many opportunities to be exposed to tech. There was very particular kind of routes that you could take. And the schooling system did not necessarily gear you up to a traditional kind of tech degree. I remember when I was doing a little bit of programming back in high school, it was just so basic. And, we're hearing about things like COBOL, and I was thinking, well, that doesn't really feel up to date with what we should be learning. And I wish that I had more opportunities back then, both in terms of actual teaching, but also to feel inspired that there was role models out there where I could think this is a young woman I could aspire to. And lacking those role models early on in my life made me realize that there is an importance for us to become those role models. And not just in terms of here's what a successful techie looks like that has achieved a certain seniority level or pay grade or whatever kind of standards. I'm thinking more, how can you be a relatable role model that is a tiering and relatable in terms of that kind of diversity piece. So, for example, embracing maybe being on the spectrum or embracing having a diverse non-technical background and still inspire people to get into tech, that it's not a barrier, it's actually a celebration. So things like that. And I realized how important it was, since I didn't have those models early on, that I could inspire the next generation. And a few years ago, I met in one of the South Coast summits the lady who heads up learning for the National Museum of Computing. And it was such a serendipitous moment. She was at the audience of one of my panels, and we were talking about the importance of women in tech. And I remember she asked a question, the whole audience stood still because she was just so fascinating in the way she spoke. And I got to know her. I got to know what the museum does. And for those that might not be aware of that name, they definitely know Bletchley Park and World War II and the importance that holds. So essentially, it's part of the same general organization. And I started getting involved with their initiatives and supporting their STEM initiatives in terms of how they work with marginalized schools that are hoping to inspire the next generation to get into a STEM career and choose the right A levels, and support them as such because they don't have the same opportunities day to day. And to me, that meant something so deep. And I'm really grateful that the community brought me and connected me to her, but also brought me the opportunities to give back to them overall.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you ready to transform your career in just 90 days? Join me on the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge and unlock your full potential. As I listen to the podcast, enroll now and get 10% off using the code MBAP. That's MBAP at the checkout. Don't miss this opportunity to learn from industry leaders and accelerate your growth. Visit ako.nz365guy.com and start your journey today. You mentioned Bletchley Park there. Just for our international listeners, do you want to explain what that is?
Of course. So this is, hopefully we have some history buffs out there. So Bletchley Park is a very historical place when it comes to World War II. Some people may have heard of Alan Turing or the Enigma machine. This was where the infamous code breaking started when in World War II they were fighting against the Germans and the Enigma machine, and how they broke eventually the code through all the amazing academics, including but not limited to Alan Turing all the fantastic female linguists and whatnot. So this is one of the famous places that started it all. It was actually classified until only not a handful, but not too many years ago. And now that's how we know its history, are able to visit it and appreciate the real machines that are still there today, to learn about the history and see it come to life.
But does Microsoft have a presence there as well?
So they support the National Museum of Computing, yes. And I was actually, when I first entered the MVP program, I was already involved with a museum. And I remember in my onboarding call, Claire Smith, our UK lead, mentioning, and I thought, oh my days, how did I not know this already? That's such a beautiful coincidence. So yeah, there's definitely support, and I'm really glad because the kind of impact they have on these young kids is priceless.
It's just that when I was in London, recently for that Slovenia trip and stuff, there was lots of mention of Bletchley Park by people in the room as though there was some user group activities happening out there or that type of thing as well. And I was ignorant to the name prior to that.
Yes, there is actually a user group that some of our friends here in the UK are running. So Stephanie Stacey, Louis Babbitt, and Chris Handingford, among others, are running the user group and supporting it in so many ways. So that's one of the reasons why you probably heard it.
Awesome. Tell us about your work in the Copilot space. What are you up to there?
So on a personal / MVP level, I mean, actually, I'm not even going to start there. I love AI and the exciting features. I am a geek at heart, so that is actually not an unexpected answer there. But I think there is a lot we can do to help others grow. As I mentioned earlier, we have certain opportunities and blessings as being MVPs and being in the community. And for me, it's all about giving back to others, to our clients. So it actually means a lot to me in terms of leveraging its full potential, being realistic as well, but also demystifying it in a practical and relatable way. And that's probably the exchange manager in me talking, as well as the marketeer. I want to make it tangible, I want to make it exciting, and I want to make it as it has human impact. So on a community level, I love doing sessions that are having some kind of movie theme and bringing one of the co-pilots to life. So there's a few that are out there. There's a really cool, there's a couple actually of multilingual co-pilot sessions that I do. And it's really fun because there's so many new functionalities coming out, including on the customer service space. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. Copilot for sales, obviously being a sales and customer insights person, that always keeps me busy. And I love collaborating with the Fast Track team and bringing out their new features to life. So that's on the community side. But at work, something that I've been extremely passionate about since last year, actually, is driving what started as a regional but has now become a global initiative on building a Copilot community on the BizUp side. And it started off more as it was a grassroots initiative. As much as it may sound cheesy, it was a movement from the people for the people. Exactly because I realized that, early on, we faced even simple struggles like we couldn't spell Copilot properly. And by we, I mean generally people, right? We still face it sometimes.
Even Bill Gates, I was reading an article of his in his Gates notes yesterday, and he spelt it capital C-O dash pilot.
I still see it to this day, to be honest, from various people. I chuckle sometimes. It triggers me others. But that's just an example of all the enlightenment that we could contribute in, because there's so many of them, and it's not just about doing kind of that level 100 description of what it does, but also really getting to the bottom of how we can leverage it and make the most out of it when it comes to integrating with all sorts of systems and truly bringing the customer to life, or a customer experience. So building that community app, creating specialists that are truly equally passionate about this, and also creating a community that spans above and beyond the day-to-day work and is organically thriving. That has meant the most to me, because I was finally able to bring to life what one of the most important things for me, which is the importance of having that tribe of people that you can rely to and connect with, and in a way connected my MVP/personal persona with my work persona. So it was such a blessing and something that I'm still very much growing and driving.
If people want to get involved in that community, how do they get involved?
So this is an internal work community. So we've been doing various activities to evangelize, socialize, and connect people together. And it's actually, people attend our sessions or find our content and end up reaching out and say, oh, can I be part of it? And it's been amazing how much it's organically grown through word of mouth, as well as people that have come to a session or seen the content and feel, I want to be a part of this. So I've never seen that kind of movement or growth before internally in a work initiative. I don't know about you. I'd love to hear other people's stories on that, actually, because if you asked me when I started, I never thought it would be like this. I thought it was going to be a very limited group and lifespan, but turns out there is beauty in bringing people together.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If you like the show and want to be a supporter, check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Thanks again, and see you next time.